Chapter 1. Imagining a harsh future world. The Earth is no longer the gentle home that once cradled life in its verdant embrace. It has become a colossal furnace. The oceans boil like giant pots forgotten on a blazing stove, their waters no longer the source of life but a toxic, scalding liquid, steaming like the breath of an enraged monster. Oxygen. Once the precious gas that nourished millions of marine creatures, now fades in the horrific heat, leaving schools of fish to swim in desperation. Their fins flailing weakly like dry leaves falling on barren ground. The vibrant coral reefs of yesteryear are now nothing but gray-white skeletons, silently narrating the tale of a bygone era. The ice at the poles melts rapidly, and rising seas swallow cities at the Earth's edges. The mighty glaciers, once standing proud like cold, unyielding gods, now groan in agony. They dissolve at a dizzying pace, each icy droplet merging with the scalding ocean, creating chaotic currents like blood gushing from an unhealing wound. The rising seas, ravenous as a starving beast, devour coastal cities that were once humanity's pride. Skyscrapers, which once pierced the heavens with arrogance, now drown in bitter salt water, their spires jutting out like desperate hands waving for salvation. London, New York, Bangkok, names that once echoed with grandeur, are now faint memories beneath the growling waves. On land, the story is even grimmer. Temperatures blaze like flames erupting from the Earth's core, incinerating everything in their path. The air is so hot it could cook an egg on the sidewalk, and asphalt roads melt like wax under the sun, warping even the sturdiest steel rails. Rain is no longer nature's gift. It falls erratically, sometimes as scarce as the last tear of a dying soul. Sometimes in torrents like the sky's wrath, sweeping away homes and fields in catastrophic floods. Storms, now fiercer than ever, roar across continents like giant monsters, tearing through everything, leaving behind only fragments of once peaceful lives. Humans and creatures on land teeter on the brink of extinction. Each day, thousands perish. Their bodies cannot withstand the crushing heat. Sweat pours like rivers, but it cannot cool their burning skin. Eyes glaze over, staring at a merciless red sky. Children scream in stifling homes, while adults, helpless, clasp trembling hands, wondering if tomorrow will even come. This world is no longer a place to live. It's a battlefield where life fights for every fleeting breath. The boiling oceans, melting ice, and blazing land compose a symphony of destruction, ceaselessly heralding a future humanity may not survive. Yet, amidst this despair, a question lingers. Can adaptation, the spark that guided our ancestors through dark times, still save us from this nightmare? Chapter 2. Earth's climate history and adaptation. The Earth, the blue cradle of life, hasn't always been the serene paradise painted in our minds. Over billions of years, it has roared like a wild beast, hurling brutal challenges at life. Epics that make today's vision of a scorching, suffocating future seem like a mere breeze. Oceans once burned like molten lava, the atmosphere choked with toxic fumes, and the land lay desolate as a lifeless desert. Yet through those furnaces, life didn't surrender. It bent, transformed, and rose like fragile blades of grass piercing through stone, seeking light in suffocating darkness. Millions of years ago, Earth endured chapters darker than our worst nightmares. There were times when temperatures surged like flames from the planet's core, turning continents into giant frying pans where rivers evaporated in an instant. Other eras saw ice blanket the world like an eternal winter's embrace, locking life in a frigid stranglehold. But each time, life refused to yield. It learned to breathe in choking air, swim through toxic waters, and stand firm on scorched plains. From tiny microbes to colossal creatures, all carried the unquenchable fire of adaptation, a flame that never died, even if the heavens fell. Among these epic tales, the Cretaceous period shines as a heroic saga of survival. Tens of millions of years ago, when Earth was far warmer than today, our ancestors, small, furry creatures with sharp eyes, took their first steps on the path of survival. It was an era of tropical forests stretching to the poles, where sunlight pierced dense canopies like golden arrows, and giant dinosaurs thundered across the land. But don't mistake it for paradise. The heat could turn the air into a massive steam bath, and torrential rain swept away everything like miniature tsunamis. In that furnace, our ancestors had no sharp claws or massive bodies to face their foes. What they had was intelligence, a spark in the darkness, guiding them through brutal days. They adapted like master artists, crafting life from seemingly impossible pieces. When polar winters plunged regions into months of darkness, they learned to see through the night, their eyes wide like lanterns lighting the way. When heat scorched the plains, they stood upright on two legs, rising to catch rare breezes and escape the ground's fiery grip. They didn't just survive, they thrived, multiplied, and left footprints in lands even the fiercest predators feared to tread. The Cretaceous wasn't a tale of destruction, but a testament to life's strength against adversity. Looking back, Earth is like a vast book, each page a turbulent climate era. Some pages burn with heat, others freeze with cold, but every line is written in the ink of adaptation. Life never stopped finding a way, whether through boiling oceans or frozen fields. Now, as humanity faces a grim future of rising seas and blazing lands, the question isn't whether we can survive. It's whether the fire of adaptation that saved our ancestors still burns brightly enough to guide us through the coming inferno. History proves life always finds a path. But this time, as human hands ignite the flames of destruction, do we have the wisdom to keep them from consuming everything? Chapter 3. Exploring the science of past climates. Beneath the gray skies of Antarctica, where ice reigns like a cold tyrant, a strange ship appeared in January 1987. It wasn't a typical vessel with proud sails. Instead, a massive 62-meter drill rose from its deck like a steel spear ready to pierce the Earth's heart, painted a deep green, like the ocean's shadowy depths. The ship carried a mission not to hunt for oil, but to unearth secrets buried millions of years ago. On its deck, 25 scientists stood silent, their breath mingling with the frigid air. Eyes fixed on the drill as it descended, inch by inch, like an explorer probing the caverns of time. The drill plunged through 300 meters of icy water. Then struck the sediment below, stone pages written when Earth was young. For 27 relentless hours, it bored through layers of geology stacked like forgotten diaries, bringing up precious mud samples. And then, among the brown-gray and pale-green sediments, something miraculous emerged. A thin, 20-centimeter layer of red clay, vivid as dried blood against the stone. That humble layer told of an Antarctica from 56 million years ago, where the average temperature reached 15 degrees Celsius, as warm as a gentle spring day. There, no ice ruled. But temperate rainforests stretched wide, their green canopy swaying like curtains hiding life secrets. Ferns, conifers, and vibrant flowers adorned a land once claimed by cold. While our primate ancestors, small creatures with nimble hands, quietly swung through the branches. But the red clay wasn't the only witness. Along Antarctica's coastal islands, fossils entombed in rock continued the tale. Palm leaves, their veins sturdy like outstretched hands catching sunlight, evoked a tropical paradise where winter never dared to tread. Nearby, crocodile bones, those of cold-blooded hunters who basked in warm waters, lay silent in the stone, like ancient warriors frozen in noble poses. These fossils weren't mere relics. They were pieces of a grand mosaic, painting an ecosystem where temperate rainforests buzzed with birdsong, rustling leaves, and the soft steps of our ancestors. That Antarctica wasn't a frozen wasteland, but a vibrant stage where life danced under a gentle sun. The scientists aboard the ship, clutching red clay and fossils, didn't just see the past, they felt it. Each rock sample, each fossilized leaf, each bone was a letter from millions of years ago, delivering a clear message. Earth was once vastly different, and its climate a symphony of ever-shifting notes. The palms whispered of days without frost, when rivers never froze. Crocodiles spoke of warm afternoons when the sun was a faithful companion, warming their bodies for hunts and mating. And our primate ancestors left traces of their ingenuity and resilience, like tiny flames burning through history's darkness. From that Antarctic drill ship, science opened a window to the past, where climate wasn't an enemy, but a masterful storyteller. Those fossils, like glittering jewels in the dark, showed not only how warm and lush Earth once was, but also how life adapted to thrive. Yet as the scientists gazed at the icy Antarctic sky of 1987, they couldn't help but wonder. If Earth had changed so drastically before, what lies ahead as human hands begin to write new chapters in its climate story? Chapter 4. Understanding Climate Change Through Fossils. Under the fading light of an ancient afternoon by a quiet Chinese river, a man stood deep in thought. His sharp eyes were fixed on strange traces revealed after a landslide. He was Chicxulub, a geologist with a poet's soul, always seeking stories hidden in rocks and earth. Before him, fossilized bamboo stems lay entombed, sturdy and proud like warriors sealed by time. Bamboo, a plant of lush forests, gentle rains, and cool air. How could it appear in this now arid land? Where does swirled like waves in a desert sea? Chicxulub frowned slightly, his hand brushing the stone as if he could hear the past whispers. He guessed that long ago. This place was a verdant paradise, where a mild, humid climate cradled life like a tender mother. Those bamboo fossils weren't just plant remains, they were letters from a lost world, sent across millions of years. Each vein in a leaf, each segment of a stem, was like invisible ink, telling of skies thick with rain clouds, water gurgling through dense forests, and air cool with the breath of life. Where now only sand and rock remained, there once stood forests where bamboo soared, swaying in the breeze like nature's dance. Chicxulub, with his curious mind and patient hands, opened the first door to understanding that climate isn't a static picture. It's a river, winding through time's bends. But bamboo wasn't the only storyteller. Beneath the earth, other sediments and fossils lay like ancient books, waiting for someone skilled enough to turn their pages. Each layer of soil, each bone, each leaf was a piece in the vast puzzle of past climates. Scientists, heirs to Chicxulub's spirit, used them to measure the immeasurable, the heat of long-gone sunny days, the rain that fell like silver curtains, and even CO2, the invisible but mighty gas shaping the planet's fate. The red clay in Antarctica, thin as silk, revealed a warm era of temperate rainforests. Fossilized palm leaves in Germany, sturdy as hands reaching for light, whispered of winters never cold. Turtle and crocodile bones scattered in stone spoke of warm rivers flowing through lands now frozen. These weren't just snapshots of ancient ecosystems. They were thermometers, rain gauges, and gas canisters of the past. From the stomata on fossil leaves, scientists counted CO2 levels. Fewer stomata meant abundant CO2, more meant scarcity. From carbon isotopes in plant cells, they gauged temperatures and how life adapted. Each fossil, each sediment layer, was a voice from the earth, singing of times when Earth burned like a furnace or froze in eternal winter. As scientists peered through microscopes at these fossil fragments, they didn't just see the past, they felt Earth's pulse across millions of years. Those sediments and fossils, like silent companions, helped humanity map ancient climates, from boiling oceans to icy plains. But in their eyes, gazing at these shards of history, a question lingered. If Earth changed so dramatically by nature's hand, what happens now as humans, with ambitious hands, fan the flames of climate change? The fossils offered no answers, but they stood there, quiet witnesses, awaiting the next chapter of the story. Chapter 5. The Greenhouse Effect Mechanism. On an afternoon in 1824, under Paris's misty sky, Joseph Fourier sat in a small room. His eyes scanning pages dense with handwritten notes. No poet or painter, his mind crafted invisible pictures of how Earth breathed, lived, and warmed itself. With a quill in hand, he jotted down a bold idea. The atmosphere, that thin veil around the planet, wasn't just a shield but a giant heater. He realized sunlight hitting the Earth didn't vanish into space. It was trapped by wondrous waves, infrared radiation, like invisible threads holding warmth close. To Fourier, the atmosphere was like a greenhouse in a garden, letting sunlight in but keeping heat captive, refusing to let it go. Fourier's idea drifted quietly through his era, but it planted a seed for a revolution in how we understand Earth. He saw the planet as a living thing, inhaling light and exhaling warmth, with the atmosphere as gentle hands cradling life below. Infrared radiation, those slow waves invisible to human eyes, moved lazily through the air, holding heat like a mother hugging her child in the cold night. This greenhouse effect, as Fourier called it, made Earth warm enough for rivers to flow, trees to grow, and life to flourish. But in his pensive gaze, he wondered, if the atmosphere changed, could that warmth become a foe instead of a friend? Decades later, across the ocean, a woman with deft hands and a sharp mind picked up Fourier's story. Eunice Foote, in her simple lab, had no fancy tools, but her passion for discovery burned bright. She prepared 3 glass tubes, each a tiny world, and filled them with different gases, CO2, water vapor, and nitrogen. With an artisan's care, she placed thermometers inside, then let the tubes bask in sunlight, like children playing in summer. Something magical happened. The temperatures rose. But the CO2 tube heated fastest, like a flame flaring amid embers. When the sunlight faded, CO2 held the warmth longest, radiating heat like a hearth that wouldn't cool. Foote's experiment wasn't just a game with light and gas. It was a bold claim that CO2, that invisible gas floating in the air, was the master of heat retention. Through the dancing numbers on her thermometers, she saw that more CO2 meant a hotter Earth, like an uncontrolled furnace. The atmosphere, with CO2's presence, was like a thickening blanket. The more CO2, the heavier it grew, and the more stifling the heat. With simple but profound insight, Foote laid the foundation for understanding that human hands, by releasing CO2, could turn Earth's gentle greenhouse into a blazing inferno. From Fourier to Foote, the greenhouse effect story isn't just numbers or dry experiments. It's a journey to grasp how Earth keeps itself warm and how life depends on that delicate balance. The atmosphere, like a skilled artist, knows how to hold heat to nurture forests, rivers, and humanity. But when CO2 rises, like a discordant note in a symphony, it can turn a soothing melody into a roar of destruction. As sunlight streamed through Foote's lab window, she didn't just see rising temperatures, she saw a future where humans must face the fire they've kindled. The greenhouse effect, once nature's secret, now stands as a warning, a guiding light, but also a growing shadow. Chapter 6. CO2 and climate change over time. Under the deep blue skies of ancient Earth, an invisible dance played out for millions of years. With CO2, that tiny but mighty gas, leading the rhythm of climate. Formless and odorless, it was a masterful conductor, wielding temperature like a wand. When CO2 flooded the atmosphere, it turned Earth into a radiant greenhouse, where heat embraced every corner like a thick blanket woven from sunlight. These greenhouse periods were symphonies of warmth, with shimmering oceans like molten mirrors and tropical forests stretching like endless green tapestries. But when CO2 dwindled, like a sudden low note, Earth cooled, slipping into icehouse periods, dark chapters where ice ruled like a cruel king, locking life in a frigid grip. CO2 levels, like a giant thermometer dangling in the sky, shaped the planet's fate across eras. High CO2 meant Earth blazed like a furnace, nurturing lush jungles and giant creatures. Low CO2 meant the planet shivered, cloaked in frost, with ice fields stretching to the horizon. But how can we hear CO2's melody from millions of years ago? How do we know how this invisible gas danced in the ancient air? The answer lies in silent witnesses, treasures Earth preserved like sacred relics, air bubbles in Antarctic ice, stomata on fossil leaves, and carbon isotopes in plant cells. In Antarctica, where ice stands like eternal statues, scientists drill deep, retrieving ice cores that sparkle like time's jewels. Inside, tiny air bubbles, trapped for millions of years, tell of the ancient atmosphere. Each bubble is a breath of Earth, holding the CO2 that once drifted through forests, oceans, and lands now gone. Under light, scientists see days when CO2 abounded, heating the planet like a giant hearth, and moments when it waned, ushering in cold like an icy tsunami. Further afield, fossil leaves buried in stone reveal another secret. Plants, nature's quiet artists, breathe through tiny pores, stomata, like miniature doors opening for CO2. When CO2 was plentiful, leaves needed fewer pores, like a satisfied guest at a feast. When it was scarce, they sprouted more, like hungry eyes seeking scraps of gas. Scientists, with deft hands and sharp microscopes, count these pores, mapping CO2 levels of bygone eras, a map where each dot is a beat of climate's heart. Deep in fossil plant cells, carbon isotopes whisper yet another tale. Plants prefer carbon, 12, the common isotope, like a familiar dish. But when CO2 was scarce, they grew less picky, taking in carbon, 13, the rarer sibling, like a starving soul with no choice. Through these isotopes, Locked in stone like time's fingerprints, scientists measure the CO2 that once flowed through the air, from days when Earth glowed in sunlight to times it trembled under snow. These air bubbles, stomata, and isotopes aren't just tools. They're storytellers, singing of CO2 and how it shaped climate across millions of years. They reveal Earth as a warm greenhouse, then a frozen palace, all hinging on that invisible gas. But as scientists study these relics, a chill runs through them. If CO2 transformed Earth through nature's power alone, what happens now as humans pour tons of it into the sky? The answer, like a silent shadow, waits ahead. Chapter 7. Major climate periods. Over billions of years, Earth has sung a vibrant score of climate, each period an epic chapter written in CO2 and etched in stone. 500 million years ago, in the first greenhouse era, the planet glowed like a giant hearth, its warm ocean shimmering like molten mirrors under blazing sunlight. CO2 saturated the atmosphere, heavy as a thick blanket, trapping heat to cradle new life. It was the dawn of multicellular life, tiny, wondrous creatures like first sparks in the dark, rising from ocean depths, multiplying and spreading like relentless waves. The warm, fertile seas became life's cradle, where creation's symphony began to hum. But the music wasn't always gentle. By 444 million years ago, a sudden lone note rang out, plunging Earth into the Ordovician mass extinction, a chapter dark as a moonless night. CO2, the conductor of warmth, vanished abruptly, like a cold wind snuffing a flame. The atmosphere thinned, exposing the planet to biting cold, and ice surged like a white tsunami. Sea levels dropped dozens of meters, leaving barren sands and stunned marine life unable to adapt. 85% of life vanished, like candles snuffed in a storm, leaving only faint glimmers, ancestors of today's species, shivering to survive in the icehouse's cruel embrace. Earth, once a cozy home, became a frozen palace where life fought for every breath. Time passed, and in the Cretaceous period, Earth donned a milder warmth, less radiant than ancient greenhouses. The climate was gentle enough to turn polar regions into unexpected green fields. In Alaska and Siberia, now ruled by eternal snow, sparse forests once stood. Where dinosaurs, nature's giants, trod heavily. They adapted to long winter darkness, their large eyes like lanterns piercing endless nights, their smaller bodies conserving heat in relative cold. The warm climate, a faithful ally, let them thrive where none should, turning polar lands into lively stages where dinosaur roars mingled with rustling leaves under pale sunlight. Then, 55 million years ago, in the Paleocene, Earth leaped into a new fiery dance. Temperatures soared, CO2 surged like a tidal wave. And tropical rainforests, dense green carpets, spread to the Arctic Circle. There, averages ranged from 16 to 21 degrees Celsius, warm as an endless summer, where ferns and palms swayed in breezes. And small creatures darted through canopies. But the heat wasn't a gift for all. Near the equator, where the sun burned relentlessly, temperatures topped 40 degrees Celsius, turning lands into stifling furnaces where life huddled like faint sparks in a desert. Earth, in that era, was an overloaded greenhouse, lush at the poles but a forbidden zone at the equator, choked by merciless heat. These major climate periods, from radiant greenhouses to frigid icehouses, from the warm Cretaceous to the torrid Paleocene, are chapters in Earth's great book. Each is written with CO2, carved by ice and fire, and told through fossils and sediments. They show a planet that never stands still. It shifts, bends, and challenges life with every breath. But as scientists trace these marks, a question haunts them. If CO2 drove Earth through such wild eras, what does it mean now as humans fuel its flames? The answer, like a quiet shadow, lingers between past and future. Chapter 8. Evolution and adaptation of plants and animals. As Earth cooled after blazing epochs, a humble but resilient guest stepped onto life's stage. Grass. This plant, frail-looking as green threads strewn across the ground, held the strength of an unyielding warrior. Emerging in the Cretaceous and exploding in cooler times, grass adapted by weaving itself into the soil, regrowing swiftly like a phoenix rising from ashes. Even when trampled or burned, its leaves, studded with tiny silica grains like sharp gems, could wear down the teeth of any fool daring to graze it. Its seeds, light as dreams, floated on winds instead of waiting for animals, making grass a silent conqueror, cloaking vast plains in endless green tapestries. Grass's rise wasn't just a plant's tale, it was a revolution, shaking the food chain like a small earthquake. Grasslands spread, replacing dense forests, creating open lands where sunlight poured and winds sang. Grazing animals, from primitive horses to large beasts, evolved to cope. Their teeth grew long like enduring blades, resisting silica's grind, while some formed vast herds like armies guarding against predators. Predators, forced to adapt, honed speed and cunning, turning grasslands into survival arenas where each sprint was a dance between life and death. Grass, in its simplicity and might, redrew life's map, ushering in a new era for Earth. Far south, in vast Africa, another adaptation story unfolded among our primate ancestors. As Earth cooled and climates shifted, tropical forests, their green fortresses, shrank like curtains drawn up. The cause wasn't just CO2 but grand geological shifts. 50 million years ago, India collided with Asia, birthing the towering Himalayas like a giant wall against the sky. The clash reduced atmospheric CO2 and birthed monsoons, erratic winds deciding where rain fell and where lands dried. Africa's forests, once a green ocean, receded, giving way to sprawling grasslands and savannas where suns scorched and winds howled. Our primate ancestors, small beings with keen eyes and nimble hands, faced a survival crossroads. Some clung to dwindling forests, swinging through branches like aerial dancers. Others, bolder, stepped onto the grasslands, where no trees offered climb or shade. They stood upright on two legs, rising like resilient grass, escaping ground heat and catching cool breezes. Those legs didn't just carry them farther. They freed their hands to grasp, to create, planting the first seeds of human intelligence. The harsh but open savanna became their school, each day a lesson in survival. From finding food amid dry grass to dodging predators in twilight shadows, grass and primates, though worlds apart, were artists of adaptation, painting survival on a shifting climate's canvas. Grass turned plains into its kingdom, reshaping how animals lived and hunted. Primates, pressed by shrinking forests and monsoons, learned to stand tall and conquer new lands. The Himalayas, a grand architect, indirectly shaped their fate, pushing them from forest cradles to face vast savannas. From those first steps, they didn't just survive, they began a journey to conquer Earth, carrying the flame of adaptation that burned for millions of years. But looking back, a question lingers: if grass and primates overcame such changes, can humans today adapt as they shake the planet's climate score? Chapter 9. Humans facing heat. In the summer of 1911, along North America's Atlantic coast, the air turned into an invisible furnace, searing everything under a brutal sun. Temperatures climbed like a wild beast, unrelenting, ravaging coastal cities for 10 endless days, setting a horrific record. Streets burned like fresh-forged steel, melting asphalt into black rivers and warping sturdy rails. Desperate, people spilled into the night, sprawled on sidewalks and parks, seeking a breeze in a fiery desert. But the heat spared no one, seeping into homes, into breaths, turning sleep into a stifling dream. Over 2,000 fell. Their bodies couldn't endure the giant kiln. Some lost their minds under the scorching pressure. That event, like a scar on human memory, reminded us that no matter how clever, we remain fragile before extreme heat's might. Yet humans aren't entirely helpless. Over millions of years, they've honed their bodies into adaptation machines, however imperfect. Their skin, less hairy than their primate ancestors, is smooth as a calm lake, letting heat slip away without a thick fur coat trapping it. Millions of sweat glands their bodies, like tiny springs, pouring water to cool flesh when the sun blazes. And their legs, gifts from African savanna days, lift them upright, like trees reaching for breezes, sparing them ground heat and exposing less to sunlight. Walking on two legs wasn't just a survival leap. It was an adaptation stance, helping humans endure days when Earth turned into a giant heater. Still, that adaptation has limits. Like a thin thread between life and death. The human body, however clever, can only take temperatures up to 40 degrees Celsius before cracking. Beyond that, it's a desperate fight. Sweat pours like waterfalls. But without water to replenish, the body withers like a drought-stricken field. Blood thickens, the heart races like an overworked engine, struggling to pump life to crying organs. Muscles cramp, seizing like tightened steel cords, and the mind clouds, sinking into delirium like a ship lost in fog. When body temperature crosses the line, death comes quietly. Like darkness after a burned-out day. The 1911 heat wasn't humanity's first brush with brutal warmth, but it was the starkest warning. Our ancestors endured fiery eras. From the torrid Paleocene to the warm Cretaceous, through small but mighty evolutionary steps. They needed no air conditioning or fans. Their bodies adjusted, seeking shade, diving into water, or migrating to cooler lands like birds fleeing a storm. But in North America's 1911 furnace, shade was scarce, water insufficient, and thousands fell, proving human adaptation has a ceiling. 40 degrees isn't just a number, it's an invisible wall where biology hits its limit, and heat becomes an unyielding foe. As 1911 survivors gazed at the red sky, they didn't just see the sun, they saw their own fragility. The human body, with its bare skin, sweat glands, and upright stance, testifies to millions of years of adaptation. But it also reminds us that, however smart, we're Earth's children, vulnerable to the flames our planet, or we ourselves, can ignite. A question hangs heavy: if 1911's heat took thousands, what will the future bring as we make Earth hotter? History whispers, adaptation is key. But will that key unlock the door through the coming inferno? Chapter 11. Modern climate change. Under the increasingly heavy skies of the 21st century, Earth sings a new tune, not the gentle melody of ancient eras but the roar of a growing storm. From 2013 to 2022, the planet's temperature climbed at a terrifying pace, rising 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade, like drumbeats in a destructive anthem. The culprit is no longer nature's CO2 swings but human hands, giant machines belching smoke, forests felled, and cities aglow with endless lights. CO2, the invisible gas that shaped climates for millions of years, now surges like a black river, pouring into the atmosphere from chimneys, cars, and heaters. Earth, once a cozy greenhouse, now heats like a furnace humans themselves ignited. The heat doesn't come alone. It brings fierce companions, disasters. Storms, like roaring beasts, sweep continents with unseen strength, shredding homes and hopes like paper in the wind. Floods, like relentless tsunamis, drown lowlands, turning streets into rivers and fields into deadly marshes. Droughts, like life-draining specters, turn green plains into barren deserts, where water is rarer than gold and trees fall like defeated soldiers. And wildfires, like living flames, dance through ancient forests, leaving ash and choking smoke as nature's curse. These calamities aren't distant tales. They knock on every door, every city, with rising frequency and devastation. But climate change's cost doesn't fall evenly. Like a cruel judge, it strikes hardest at the poor and poorer nations. In Bangladesh's coastal villages, rising seas creep like silent invaders, swallowing homes and forcing families to flee ancestral lands in despair. In Africa, endless droughts turn farmers' lives into nightmares. Their cattle dying and children starving under tear-filled eyes, dependent on rare raindrops. Meanwhile, wealthy cities build concrete walls and crank air conditioners against the heat, while the poor huddle under thatch roofs, where heat sneaks like a tireless thief. Disasters don't discriminate, but survival is a privilege of the rich, an injustice carved in every wave, every flame. From 2013 to 2022, humanity watched Earth change faster than any era before. A 0.2 degrees Celsius rise per decade isn't just a statistic. It's the planet's fevered breath, the cry of burning forests, the sobs of those losing homes to floods. CO2, released by human hands, slices the atmosphere like a sharp blade, letting heat and disasters pour unchecked. Per nations, with empty hands and dwindling resources, bear the deepest pain, while the rich world hums with lights and smoke. As storms rage and fires burn, a question echoes in the stifling air. Can humans, with the intelligence that conquered savannas and jungles, adapt to the furnace they built? Or will they fall, like 1911's victims, before an angry Earth's might? The music plays on, its rhythm growing chaotic, its end still an unwritten mystery. Chapter 12. Conclusion and Invitation. As twilight fades on a smoky modern Earth, the story of climate and life pauses. But it's not the end. Through history's long chapters, from boiling greenhouse oceans to vast savannas where our primate ancestors stood tall, one truth shines like a lantern in the dark. Adaptation is existence's heartbeat. But it's not just surviving heat or cold, storms or droughts. It's a delicate dance in the food chain, where prey learns to run faster, predators grow cannier, and every creature finds its place in nature's chaotic symphony. Our ancestors, from timid forest dwellers to supreme hunters, rose to greatness. And that wondrous tale, from prey to conqueror, will light the way for our next volume. But before this book closes, the storytellers pause, gazing at a world where their audience, curious, discovery-hungry souls, listens. They don't just recount the past or warn of the future. They invite everyone to join this grand journey, where each fossil, breeze, and flame is a piece of humanity's and Earth's saga. This series, like a time-traveling ship, has sailed through harsh climate eras, tropical jungles, and sun-scorched plains, showing life as an unending dance. Now, they extend a hand, like fellow travelers, calling for support, alike as a breeze to push the ship farther. A channel subscription as a ticket for voyages ahead, where the primal universe's secrets await. As daylight dims, the story doesn't end. It rests like a breath before the music resumes. The next volume, with mysteries of food chains and survival, looms on the horizon, promising discoveries as dazzling as gems in the dark. The storytellers smile softly, whispering an invitation. Join us to see how humanity rose from ashes, from shadows, to become its own light. Earth's history is ours, and so is its future. Are you ready? With that farewell, they step back, leaving an open door, not for an ending, but for a new chapter where the audience is part of this epic tale.
But let's be real, anxiety can foggy all this stuff.